Hello and welcome to Cloud Forest Vibes. My name's Bobby, and this is how I grow orchids and carnivorous plants. Hello and welcome to Cloud Forest Vibes. Today's video is another care collab video. This time I reached out to Nina and we were talking about another care collab that we're going to be doing here in the near future, and she invited me into this one. So it's Nina from Ninjas Orchids, myself, and Mattbynature. The topic of today's care collab video is Laelia Dayana. Unfortunately, I do not have blooms. We are actually looking right at it here amidst all of these other plants. But this is my Laelia Dayana. I've had it for about a year and a half. I got it from Andy's Orchids, and I have changed up some care and culture with it in the recent season, and yeah, done a lot with it. So it's doing really well, but let me get into a little bit about the plant itself before I get into my plant individually. Laelia Dayana is found in Brazil at elevations of 500 to 2,000 meters in the Organ Mountains near Rio, on lichen-covered trees and forests as a small-size, cool-to-warm growing epiphyte. It's got a single fleshy leaf on a long, kind of tubular-shaped pseudobulb, and it blooms in the summer until fall on a 1.5 inch long or so single-flowered inflorescence. The typical form of Laelia Dayana is a very beautiful pink and kind of magenta color, but I actually have a different variety. I have Laelia Dayana var Cerulean. The bloom on mine is very much a, lavendery, whitish lavendery colored petal and sepal. It has a very deep purpley colored trumpet-shaped lip with purple and white striations or lines on them, and it really is a beautiful bloom. If I can find one that I can use, I'll throw it up, and then I'll also throw up another picture of the regular version of Laelia Dayana, in case the other guys don't have blooms on theirs or don't throw pictures up of it. As I mentioned, it grows from an elevation of 500 to 2,000 meters, so it's very, very, very tolerant of different temperatures. It can grow cool to warm. I grow mine right in the middle, intermediate. I grow all my orchids in a tent, except for the ones in the tank, of course, but I do keep greenhouse-like conditions, and it never really gets over 82 degrees in here. My summer low temperature is about 66, usually 67, and wintertime I usually don't exceed about 74, 75 degrees, and wintertime I go down to about 58. This thing gets a ton of light. It was always growing on the bright side of my greenhouse, but recently I added some mesh netting up at the very apex of it, and this has a spot almost up near the very, very top of this. And since I've done that, it started to grow even stronger. I was having a little bit of issues with my sphagnum moss, as we've talked about in a few other videos, but we won't get into that here. So what I've done with this, I took all of the moss off its mount. It's growing bare rooted on this piece of cork, and it's very, very happy. As you can see, it's got roots coming all over it. This is the newest growth. It's bigger than anything else on the plant. It's got a progression. This was large, it gets small again, it's getting a little bit bigger. That's my growth from last year. And this is my newest one, big, bad, and happy. It's firmly attached. There is no fishing line holding that thing on. It is just there. The roots have grown all the way around the back of the mount. And again, it's very, very happy in a very bright situation. I think it's only about 2 feet underneath my grow light right now. Of course, it's filtered a bit through the tent and everything else, but it gets very, very bright light. One of my brightest growing orchids. It says here on iSoap, mount on tree fern and all that. I don't do that. I just make sure it stays moist. I water this just about once a day. Most of my bare-rooted Cattleyas get a lot of air movement, and despite the fact that they are bare-rooted, I watered this thing a few hours ago, and you can see the roots are still green and happy. They're actually still dripping from the mount a little bit. My humidity in this tent is about, right now, even with this open, 81%. Typically it's between 84 and 89. I have a dehumidifier that regulates that so it doesn't get crazy. I don't want montane conditions in here. I have that in the tank. and a lot of these plants would be unhappy at 90% all of the time. This, I think, is one of them, though it does appreciate good high humidity. Any Cattleya type that I know of, at least all the ones that I've grown, they all love 80% plus humidity. They will not bat an eye at it, but you're just going to have to be careful of what media you choose, because you do want to make sure the roots dry out in between waterings. As far as feeding goes for these guys, I feed it just like I would any other Cattleya type. I've recently adjusted my feeding a bit, so I have 2 levels of feed. I've always fed at about 80 parts per million and 150. I'm no longer doing that. I'm feeding about 60 parts per million or 100 parts per million. It just depends on what I feel like mixing that day. 100's not too high for just about anything in here. Sometimes I'll skip out on my Draculas and Pleurothalids, things like that. But 100 fed frequently to these guys, Phalaenopsis types, anything like that, does the trick. It's just the same as boosting it up higher and watering it less. So as far as I'm concerned, new fresh nutrients all the time, low levels of feed, almost constant feedings when in growth. Now I do flush it regularly. I probably flush it once every week or two. Definitely every month you're going to want to give them a flush no matter what. And I do use Kelp Max, I use CalMag, all the frills, just like I do with all my other orchids. I typically feed that between 40 and 60 parts per million. I will combine them. I'll even add it to my fertilizer, but I will do it fresh. I never combine stuff, let it sit, and feed a couple days at a time. I always do it fresh. Again, that's typical for just about any orchid. I wouldn't do that any different for anything else in my entire collection, and this is no different. Now, I have never bloomed this plant. Again, it's getting the brightest light ever that it's ever gotten now, and we're going into winter. The interesting thing about this guy and a lot of Cattleya types is this is one kind of Cattleya type that actually needs a dry winter rest. So here in about a month and a half, this thing, once it starts slowing down and the season starts changing and all that, it's going to get more light because the sun's going to drop. It's going to get sun through the window where it's at. The bright light's going to stay brighter. I might even lower it just a little bit so all the Cattleya types get a little bit more light. And also my dendrobiums and things like that that are back there in the corner. But this is going to get a dry winter rest this year. I think Laelia pumila and a couple other ones, they are also going to get a dry winter rest. I've done a lot of studying. I really wondered why this wasn't blooming because, again, it grows very well. It's a very strong, healthy, happy plant, well-established plant now. And yeah, I didn't get blooms. No signs, no nothing. So I think last year I kept it too moist through the winter. I still had sphagnum moss on that thing, and it just did not ever really dry out, I don't think. As you can see, it didn't harm the plant. This one will actually grow a bit moist. Again, it recommends to be grown on tree fern by a bunch of people, so you can keep this pretty moist in the growth season as long as there's a lot of air to the roots and you do let it dry out between waterings. I'm not exactly sure where to go from there. I guess we'll get in close and take a look at this thing a little bit better because I know we're all the way out here. So let's get in here and do that, and we'll close out this video. Again, so here's a nice up-close look at my Laelia Dayana, and again, this is the var cerulean. As you can see, lots and lots of really healthy roots on here. It really did have a great season. The roots are going all over the place, and that is what we like. I've got some of that nice epiphytic moss that just grows freely in here, growing on this mount. So one day, hopefully, that stuff will take over as well, and this is going to look really neat with a bunch of live moss growing on it. As you can see, the progression of leaves, the newest one is definitely the healthiest, happiest one, and it's producing all kinds of roots right now, just ahead of the resting season. So that seems to be pretty typical with this one. It does this well, at least last season, and it's doing it again this season. So the growth matures, the roots push, and then it needs to go into a nice rest for the winter. So what we're looking for now is some new growth and just keeping this thing happy. I'm going to, again, keep it really dry this winter and see if that doesn't help it out. Anyhow, that is my video for today, guys. Again, thank you, Nina, for inviting me into this thing, and I hope both of your guys' video, you guys have blooms, because unfortunately I do not have any to share. please go ahead and check out Matt and Nina's videos and their channels as well. They've both got really awesome channels that grow some really, really neat plants. So if you haven't already, please go check them out and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, guys, stay safe and happy growing. Look at those roots. It's a good way to end it, huh? A little bit of root porn for everybody. Loving it. Alright guys, see ya.